An explosion that shocked the world. A coastline forever changed. The oil impossible to remove. Nothing could destroy it until the source was found, until that source was sealed. To uncover the source of Islamic terror, read the Qur'an Dilemma, Islam Unplugged.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us today in our show, The Islamic Dilemma. We are discussing today the status of women in Islam, and also specifically how it is viewed under the teaching of the Quran and Sharia law. And we may also take a quick look, I believe, on some statistics from the Hadith in terms of how the Hadith also views women. Of course, we're talking about Muslim women in specifically, but in general also we want to talk about women as a whole race in general. One of the things that I've always heard, that a Muslim woman is protected when she is also getting married, that her status as a wife also will improve, that she will be a co-equal partner with her husband. Yet when you come across a verse or a passage, for instance, that is found in chapter 4, and by the way, chapter 4 is considered to be the primary chapter that you can study about the status of women and the treatment of women and marriage, divorce, and all of the things that are associated with that. And we wrote about that extensively in our book, The Quran Dilemma. And I believe, Bill, you also addressed the status of women in at least one of your books.
Oh yes, because women play such an important part in the Quran and in the Hadith that they really are a special topic that you need to stop and take a look at. I even wrote a small book on the doctrine of women. I mean, you and I are not even going to touch on the extensive amount of material that is given to women.
And the fact that Bill mentioned the word doctrine, that indicates to us that there is a number of passages that deal with women, and we're not talking about one only. We're talking about multiple passages that has to do with a lot of things that relates to their status. I want to direct our viewers to the screen. I want to show them a verse in chapter 4, verse 34. In this particular passage, it tells us that men are superior over women. And the reason for that is the fact that men work, they're working class, and they provide for their family, and this by itself allows them the status of superiority, meaning they are a degree higher. Now this is kind of interesting, Bill, because when this verse was being at least revealed by Muhammad, it is possible that that was the cultural status of his time, or of his days, or of his at least location. But is it true that women, just because they do not work, that means they're not co-equal or partners with their husband? What about the women that work? What does that make them now?
Well, a question that comes to my mind is, Muhammad's first wife was a wealthy businesswoman. Does that mean that he was superior to her even though she had money? That's left unclear. But
what is interesting, Bill, that this was issued, at least by Muhammad, revealed after the death of his first wife. So we wonder how she would have felt about this.
How would Khadijah have felt about this? Wait a minute. I gave you a business, I gave you wealth, I gave you children, and you're superior to me?
So this very argument that is used in this verse is a silly argument to begin with. Just because you, as a man, can work and your wife, maybe by choice, she doesn't want to work, does that make her a less of a person than you are? Let's take a look at another passage. Some of the rights given to a husband, which is in the same passage that we just read, is the fact that if he fears, notice the language, not that he is convinced or he have evidence or witnesses that his wife, let's say, committed something shameful. If he feels or have some fear that something might be going on, or he is, let's say, a person who has jealousy, a problem with that, you know, he's having doubts about his wife all the time, just by doing so, this suspicion alone allows him to go through a process of intimidating his wife, basically.
Right.
He can ignore her, He can refuse to, let's say, according to the verse, to even sleep with his wife. And if she rebels against him, he's given the right to beat his wife.
That's right.
Now, I ask Muslim women in general, please tell me, how does this command of you being beaten by your husband have elevated your status and improved your condition under Islam? Bill, I'm puzzled. Maybe you can help me understand this.
Well, let's put it this way. If all of a sudden you have the right to beat me, I don't feel equal to you. I just don't. I mean, putting myself in the woman's place, I remember I told you when I first started reading the Quran, I became aware of the status of women. And when I read this verse, it infuriated me. It infuriated me.
And you know, it should infuriate anybody. I mean, it should make you feel that something is terribly wrong with this command. If a husband or a male is given the authority to beat up on a woman for even fearing something or just having bad feelings of suspicion, I mean, to me, this isn't manly at all. In fact, I want to point out something that is very important for our audience. One of the main reasons when we mentioned to you in our first episode that this show is being put together is to help you, if you do not speak the Arabic language, realize the kind of teachings like this one that are found in the Quran. Bill, do you know that this verse is the most troubled verse for many of the translators of the Quran? In fact, some of them go to the extreme of adding the word beating your wife lightly. Which the Arabic language, by the way, does not have. And let's assume it says beat lightly. Why beat her at all?
Well, and another part here that's problematic is, but if the next phrase is, if they submit to you. This is all about the man being a total control.
But we are told that women are equal to man.
If they submit to you, how does...
I think the verse speaks for itself.
I think it does.
I think we need to move on to another aspect of the status of women in marriage. For instance, I'm sure you know this, Bill, that a man who is a Muslim man, I should say, is allowed to marry up to 4 wives.
Correct.
And the verse that we are looking at right now actually shows that this command is a divine command. In chapter 4, verse 3, it says this, "And if you fear that you cannot act equitably towards orphans, then marry such women as seem good to you, 2 and 3 and 4. First of all, I want to point out something. You and I were discussing this. There is some sort of a disconnect between orphans and marrying women. If we are to take that this command within its context means that only if a male is taking care of orphan females and they are the only one that he can marry, then Muslim men who are marrying more than 1 wife, they're in trouble. They're against what the divine teaching is. And if this command means, no, you can marry any woman, whether she's orphan or not, then this passage is really problematic because there is something disconnecting here.
Oh, I remember when I read this verse, I read this over and over again, and it would never make sense to me. But if you fear that you cannot act equitably towards orphans, then marry women. It's like, wait a minute, how does taking care of orphans transition to polygamy? I remember reading this over and over again, and finally it was just, I don't understand this. What? I don't understand.
Absolutely. And the other thing, Bill, I mean, this is part of, by the way, Sharia law, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about the implication of things like this under Sharia law. If Sharia law would be implemented today anywhere, in any city, in any country, in any state, men who are Muslim are allowed to marry more than 1 wife. This is polygamy. There are laws against polygamy, by the way. And this isn't the original design that God have intended for men, because God could have created Adam and 4 wives at the same time. In
Never
fact,
thought about that.
I would like to even point out something that might be troublesome to some Muslim men or even clerks. Where does it say in this particular verse that the limit is 4? The verse is using just an exaggeration here that you can marry 2 or 3 or 4. But actually in the Arabic, it's giving you like examples. It could be 2, it could be 3, it could be 4. In fact, some men in Africa end up marrying 9 and 11 and 13. And when you ask him, it says 4. They say there is no limit. Besides, we're following the footstep of the Prophet,
Exactly.
who actually was unique in marrying more than 4.
And I also heard of one Muslim ruler that interpreted this verse to be, you got 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. That's the way he read the verse. Just added 1, 2, 3, and 4 up to come up. These are the number of wives you can have.
Well, he must be a mathematician then. We are going to move on to another area where women, when they are married, also are impacted by. For instance, the idea of divorce. Now, in general, under civic law, a woman can go to court and ask for divorce. Sometimes it's with cause, sometimes it's without cause. But let's use the idea of cause. Let's say the husband is an abusive person. I think the law should always look for the best interest for the woman as a human. If the husband is abusive, beating her, causing a lot of injuries to her, her life is at risk, I think the women have the right to go and ask the court to divorce her.
Yes.
Do you know that under pure Islamic law that's not allowed? Because only the husband has the power to divorce his wife. And he can divorce her once and marry her again, twice and marry her again, but only if he divorced her 3 times. That's the only time that he's not allowed to remarry her again. And by the way, some men even can, there are some fatwas that you can send an email to your wife and saying divorce 3 times and she's divorced.
Right. Although I saw another fatwa which said that texting the divorce statement doesn't work. You got to present it to her in person. So there is some disagreement here. But divorce is quite easy for the male.
So back again to the equality between a woman and a man. In this case, a wife and her husband. I'm not seeing so far this kind of equality. In fact, I'm not seeing that the woman's status have improved at all. She's like a product that he can sell whenever he chooses to let go of it.
Yes, it's because the woman can't say, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you, and it's over. It has no meaning.
Absolutely not. In fact, if any clerk would issue a fatwa like this and give the woman the right to divorce her husband, he will find himself in a whole lot of trouble. Now, what about the idea of remarriage, by the way? Now, here is the problem. In this particular verse that we're showing, chapter 2, verse 230, it says that a divorced woman, after she's been divorced 3 times, let's say...
By the same man.
Exactly. Let's say her husband felt bad and he wants to bring her back. Can he do that?
Well, this verse says she can, but something very strange has to happen.
Tell us, Bill. What is that?
She has to marry another man, and they have to, it can't just be a fake marriage.
Not on paper.
Not on paper. It must be consummated. Then the new husband divorces her, and now then she can marry the original husband. This is bizarre.
Ladies and gentlemen, what Bill have just described is what I call a legalized prostitution, basically.
Yes.
That's basically what it is you are giving away your wife to another man to marry her, sleep with her, and then divorce her so that you can get her back. Where is the improved status in this case?
I don't see it. I don't see it.
I don't see it either, Bill. Well, Bill, this topic is definitely a very interesting one. Unfortunately, we are running completely out of time to cover the majority of things.
We're going to have to do more on this.
And I would like to see...
We have not even touched the surface.
Absolutely. I was, in fact, going to ask you, if you don't mind, that we do another, at least, episode on the same topic, because there is a lot really to cover, and we haven't scratched the surface, as you mentioned.
No, no, no.
One of the things that I would like to re-emphasize again, if Islam has improved the status of women, I ask the audience, and especially if you are a Muslim woman, please be honest with yourself, based on information that we just shared from you, which came straight from the Qur'an that you believe in as the Word of God, tell us, did this improve your status? The answer from my perspective, absolutely not. In fact, your status have been completely been disrespected and lowered from where it was before. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you so much for joining us today. Please take a look at the website that is on the screen and send us your email, questions, and comments. Until we see you next time, have a mega blessed day.